Everyone thinks Space Marines exist to save people. They don't. Towering warriors, armored giants, descending from the sky when everything else has failed. When they arrive, the war usually ends. And that's the story people believe. That these warriors are heroes. That they exist to protect humanity. That beneath the armor, there's still something human. But that belief falls apart the moment you look closer. Because Space Marines were never created to save people. They were created to complete the objective. They are not humanity's guardians. They are something far more dangerous. And once you understand what they actually are, you'll never look at them the same way again. Before anything else, you need to understand the image. Space Marines don't just fight wars. Across the Imperium, their name carries weight. Entire world grow up hearing stories about them, and some never see one in their lifetime, yet still build statues in their honor. A single Space Marine is said to be worth hundreds of normal soldiers. Stronger, faster, impossible to break. Created from the Emperor's greatest work, the Adeptus Astartes are seen as angels of war. And sometimes, that belief isn't wrong. There are moments where they arrive at the last second, hold the line, and push back horrors that would wipe out entire worlds. But here's what the stories leave out. A Space Marine doesn't measure success by how many people are saved, only by whether the objective is complete. If a city burns but the enemy is destroyed, that is victory. The people on those worlds were never part of the equation. The Imperium didn't create Space Marines to protect people. It created them to ensure humanity survives, no matter the cost. It doesn't start with a choice. No oath, no decision, no moment where someone steps forward and says, "I want this." It starts with a child being taken. From a battlefield, from a slum, from a world where survival already means fighting every single day. Because those are the only ones worth testing. Not the best people, the most durable ones. And from that point on, nothing about this is about becoming stronger. It's about finding out who can survive being broken. The trials aren't training. They are filters. Groups are pushed through conditions designed to kill most of them. Starvation, exposure, violence between candidates. Not controlled, not safe. Deliberate, because if you die here, you were never useful. That's the logic. No one mourns. No one pauses. The process just continues. And the survivors? They don't get rewarded. They get taken further. This is where the body is rebuilt. Organs forced into place. Systems altered. Pain becomes constant. Rejection is common. Death is still expected. At every step, more of them disappear. And the ones who make it through, they are no longer recognizable. Bigger, stronger, harder to kill. But that's not the real change. Because none of this was about making them better people. It was about making them compatible with something else. The gene seed, the Emperor's design, a template for war, forced into a body that was never meant to carry it. And even here, it doesn't always work. Bodies fail, minds break, more deaths, more losses, all acceptable, because the goal was never to save them. The goal was to see what survives. And then, they take the final step. Not forward, away, because this is a point where the last connection to who they were starts to disappear. No family, no past, no identity that matters anymore. Those things don't help in war, so they are stripped of importance, ignored, left behind. And here's the part people don't want to think about. None of them agreed to this. None of them understood what they were becoming. They didn't choose to give up who they were. They were taken before that choice even existed. And by the time they could understand it, there was nothing left to choose. This isn't recruitment. It's selection. It's extraction. It's turning a human life into raw material for something else. Something built for a purpose they never got to question. And once that process begins, there is no version of them that walks away from it. Because a person who could have walked away is already gone. They survived the process. But what came out the other side wasn't them. Because the real transformation didn't happen in their bodies. It happened in their minds. This is where a person stops existing. Not through death, through replacement. The Imperium doesn't just train them to think differently. It removes the parts that made thinking human in the first place. Fear is stripped out early, not because it's weakness, but because it makes you hesitate. Doubt follows, because questions slow action and action must never slow down. Then they go deeper. They don't dull emotion. They dismantle it. Compassion is not controlled. It's removed because it interferes with decisions that require sacrifice. Empathy doesn't get suppressed. It disappears because seeing someone as a person creates conflict. And conflict is something they cannot afford inside a weapon. So they rebuild what's left. Loyalty is no longer something you feel. It's something you are, hard-coded into every thought, every instinct, every reaction. To your chapter, to your orders, to the Imperium. There is no distance between command and action anymore. You don't think about obeying. You just do. And slowly, everything else stops mattering. Your past becomes irrelevant. Your name loses meaning. The idea that you were once someone starts to fade. Not erased, just disconnected. You might remember a face, a voice, a place, but it feels like a story you heard, not a life you lived, because the person who lived it isn't here anymore. And the most disturbing part isn't that it's gone. It's that you don't notice. There's no grief, no sense that anything is missing, no moment where you stop and ask what was taken from you. That question never forms, because they made sure it couldn't. They didn't just remove emotion. They removed the ability to realize it's gone. What replaces it is something clean, simple, efficient. You see a battlefield and understand it instantly. Targets, threats, objectives. Nothing else complicates the picture. No second thoughts, no hesitation, no internal resistance. Just clarity, just execution. That's what they wanted. Not warriors who might struggle, not soldiers who might question. Something that moves forward without friction, without doubt, without feeling. This isn't damage. This isn't something that went wrong. This is the intended result. A human being was taken apart, and something more useful was built in its place. And here's the part that should stay with you. They don't remember what they lost. They don't feel the absence of it. They don't even know there was anything to lose. So when they step onto a battlefield, they aren't choosing what kind of person to be. That choice is already gone. They are not soldiers. They are tools. Once everything human has been removed from the mind, the way they process the world doesn't just shift. It becomes something unrecognizable. A normal person looks at a crowd and sees people, lives, stories, faces. A space marine looks at the same crowd and sees something else entirely. Because the moment you remove emotion, memory, and personal identity, you don't just change the person. You change how reality itself is processed. Everything becomes simplified into categories that serve the mission. Threat, non-threat, objective, nothing else matters. And this is where it starts to become uncomfortable. Because you are in those categories too. To them, you are not someone with a life, a history, or future. You are a variable, a factor in a calculation they are constantly making. If you help the mission, you are useful. If you don't, you are irrelevant. If you get in the way, you are a problem. And problems get removed, not out of cruelty, not out of anger, but because that's what efficiency demands. That's how they think. Cold, direct, uncomplicated. You could explain your situation, your family, your reasons. It wouldn't register, not because they don't hear you, because none of it affects the outcome they're calculating. And the outcome is the only thing that exists. This is what happens when compassion is taken out of the equation. There's no pause, no second guessing, no moment where they step back and think, is this right? That question doesn't exist anymore. Only, does this achieve the objective? And if the answer is yes, then it gets done, even if it costs lives, even if it costs thousands of lives, even if it costs you. They don't hate people, because that would require emotion, nor enjoy suffering, because that would require feeling. They simply don't value individual lives the way you do, because they were never designed to. Their entire existence is built around scale, planetary threats, mass casualties, wars where millions die as a baseline, not an exception. In that kind of environment, individual lives stop mattering, not because they are worthless, but because they are too small to affect the outcome. And Space Marines are built to think in outcomes. The most disturbing part isn't that they can do this. It's that they don't even notice they are doing it. And it gets worse when you understand something else. They don't struggle with these decisions, because there is no debrief happening inside their mind after the city burns. No wait, no reckoning. The mission was completed. That's the entire thought, beginning and end. To them, the equation is clean, objective achieved. So the Imperium created something that can match that, something just as relentless, just as unforgiving. But here's the problem. Once you build something that sees the world like that, you don't get to turn it off. That mindset doesn't switch depending on the situation. It's constant, always running and calculating. So even when they stand among the people they are supposed to protect, they don't see them the same way. They can't, because they were never meant to. And that's a divide, the gap between what they are. And once you understand that, you start to realize what comes next isn't a failure. It's a consequence. Here's what nobody explains about Space Marines. They were never built to protect you. They were built to protect the Imperium. And those two things are not the same. You are not the Imperium. You are inside it, which means in any calculation where the Imperium's survival is weighed against yours, you already lost. This isn't a flaw in the system. It's the design. When a Space Marine looks at a crowd, they don't see people. They see variables, factors in a calculation that was already running before they landed. Threat, non-threat, objective. That's the entire world. You exist somewhere in those categories. And if you're lucky, you're irrelevant, which means you get to walk away. If you're not lucky, you're in the way. And the mission doesn't pause for what's in the way. No anger, no cruelty, no hesitation, just efficiency. That's what makes it so difficult to argue against. Because you can't appeal to a Space Marine the way you'd appeal to a person. There's no moment where they stop and think, is this right? That question was removed. What replaced it was simpler. Does this achieve the objective? And if the answer is yes, it gets done. Even if the cost is you. That's not a hypothetical. That's Tuesday. A city is under attack. Not a battlefield. A city. Homes still standing. Families still inside. Streets full of people who never signed up for any of this. Then the gunships arrive. Drop pods crash down like falling meteors. For a moment, it feels like rescue. Then the orders come through. Secure the objective. Bolt to fire tase through the street. It doesn't slow for the civilians in the line of it. Doesn't adjust. Doesn't redirect. Because adjusting costs seconds. And seconds cost the objective. Bodies fall. Not just enemies, mothers, children, workers who were just trying to survive another day. The advance never breaks rhythm. No one stops to check who died. That was already decided before they landed. Acceptable loss, not tragedy, not failure, a number, a cost already accounted for. It gets worse. A defensive line collapses on the edge of the city. Thousands of civilians trapped behind it. No route out. There is still time, still ships, still soldiers willing to try. But the calculation says something else. Resources needed elsewhere. Objective takes priority. So the order comes. Fall back. Not because saving them was impossible. Because it was inefficient. So those people wait. They hide. They hope. And eventually, they die. Now scale that up. An entire world falls. Not invasion anymore. Total collapse. Populations compromised beyond recovery. No evacuation. No attempt to separate the living from the lost. Just one decision. Erase it. Ships align in orbit, weapons lock, and fire rains down until nothing is left. Not the enemy, not the infrastructure, not the people who were still breathing when that order was given. Everything ends. And sometimes it gets even closer than that. Human soldiers, still fighting, still alive, still believing they are on the same side. But they're in the wrong place. The strike goes in anyway. Command knew they were there. They fired anyway, because the objective was completed. That's all that mattered. None of this is hidden. None of it considered extreme. It's standard, authorized, expected. The Imperium doesn't call it cruelty. It calls it the price of survival. And the price is always paid by the same people. The ones who thought they were being protected. The ones who believed they mattered in the outcome. They never did. Because Space Marines were never protecting people. They were protecting the idea of people. And ideas don't bleed. Not every Space Marine operates the same way. Some chapters protect civilians when the situation allows it, and those moments are real, worth acknowledging, but they need to be understood for what they actually are. Some chapters will hold an evacuation corridor past the point of tactical sense. They'll absorb casualties to keep civilians moving, but those moments are not the standard. They are exceptions that only exist when they do not interfere with a mission. Other chapters operate with far less restraint. They will secure objectives with absolute focus, regardless of who is caught in the process, and they do it without hesitation or apology. Entire populations can be written off as strategically irrelevant if their survival does not directly contribute to victory. In those cases, there is no attempt to soften the outcome or justify it afterward. What matters is that both types of chapters are functioning correctly. One chooses to preserve lives when it can. The other refuses to risk the mission for them. Neither is considered broken. It isn't a simple divide between good and bad. It's a spectrum built on the same foundation, where compassion is optional and success is mandatory. And once you see that clearly, the focus shifts away from individual chapters to the system that made all of them possible. It already happened once. During the Horus Heresy, the Imperium wasn't torn open by an external enemy. It was torn open by its own weapons. Entire legions turned. Not one failure, not one rogue element, but a chain reaction that nearly collapsed everything. Worlds burned, billions died, fought by beings who couldn't hesitate, couldn't question, couldn't stop. And here's what matters most about that. They didn't become monsters. They didn't malfunction. They did exactly what they were built to do. Obey, fight, win. The only thing that changed was who gave the orders. The Imperium nearly destroyed itself not because the system broke, but because the system worked perfectly in the wrong direction. And that leaves one question the Imperium has never actually answered. If it happened once, what's stopping it from happening again? Everything you've seen so far has a single origin point. The Imperium was never built to care about individuals. Not because it's cruel, because it can't afford to be. In that kind of system, you don't create heroes. You create weapons. That is exactly what Space Marines are. They are not a failure of the Imperium's ideals. They are the purest expression of them. Every part of their design points toward one outcome: efficiency in war. Their bodies are engineered to endure anything. Their minds are conditioned to obey without question, and their purpose is locked into a single direction that never changes. There is no space in that design for moral hesitation or personal judgment, because those things introduce unpredictability, and unpredictability loses wars. The Imperium understands this better than anyone. It doesn't need warriors who might choose differently in a critical moment. It needs certainty. It needs force that can be directed without resistance, without delay, and without emotional interference. Space Marines provide that with absolute reliability. Because once you accept that logic, every action they take stops looking like a moral decision and starts looking like a function. They are not deciding who lives and who dies. They are executing what the Imperium has already defined as necessary. And when a system defines necessity without room for compassion, the result is exactly what you see on the battlefield. Not protectors, not guardians, but something far more controlled, far more consistent, and far more dangerous. The terrifying part isn't that this system exists. It's that it works. It has always worked, and it will keep working long after every world it sacrifices is forgotten. Weapons that never question the hand that aims them. It works. That's what makes it disturbing. Worlds survive that shouldn't. Wars are won that would have consumed everything, because something like this exists. But look at what it required. Not just bodies rebuilt, not just minds reshaped. Something deeper was removed and never replaced. The part that sees a person and feels something. The part that hesitates when a life is on the line. The part that says, this matters. That part is gone. And because of that, billions are saved. And billions are sacrificed just as easily. That exchange never stops. It keeps feeding itself. More war demands more efficiency. More efficiency demands less compassion. Until the line disappears completely. And now the species survives. But what's left of it? A system that protects itself by becoming something colder than its enemies. A force that wins by losing everything that made it worth saving. You don't notice it at first. Because you're alive. Because the threat is gone. But the cost doesn't disappear. It's built into the survival itself. And that's the realization. They didn't just save the species. They changed what it is.